Hello, welcome to another video on our channel. Here, we translate testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today, let's learn the story of Nathaniel Whitmore. He says that he died and had a spiritual encounter with three beings who transmitted to him a message about 08 to 17 Naur 2024. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your name and city. Let us now hear Nathaniel's testimony. My name is Nathaniel Whitmore, and I'm about to share with you a story that completely changed the course of my life. It's not a story from the distant past, but something I live and breathe every day. I am here, right now, speaking to you because there is a date approaching, August 17th, 2024, that has a deep and mysterious meaning for me. It all started 4 years ago, when I had a near-death experience that awakened something inside me. Since then, I've been trying to prepare myself and help others prepare for what's to come. I know this may sound strange, even crazy to some are, but after what I've experienced, I can't just ignore what has been revealed to me. Before this life-changing event, I was an ordinary man. I worked as a software engineer at a technology company in Havenbrook, a small town in the countryside. My life was predictable, routine. I was engaged, planning my wedding, thinking about buying a house. The future seemed clear and defined. But that all changed one summer afternoon in 2020. Now, as I sit here, looking out at the lake where it all happened, I feel like I'm living in two worlds at once. One is the physical world that we all know, with its rules and limitations. The other is a realm of infinite possibilities, of deep connections with something greater than ourselves. I'm sharing my story not to convince anyone of anything, but because I feel it's important. Maybe there are others out there who have had similar experiences and feel alone or confused. Perhaps there are those who are searching for deeper meaning in their lives, or maybe, just maybe, what I'm about to tell you can help someone prepare for what's to come. So here I am, Nathaniel Whitmore, an ordinary man with an extraordinary story to tell. A story of death and rebirth, of loss and discovery, of fear and hope. A story that begins with an accident, but unfolds into a journey of self-discovery and purpose. And it all leads to one date, August 17th, 2024, that hangs on the horizon like a beacon, guiding me through the days and nights. Get ready for a journey that challenges conventional understanding of reality, a journey that took me from the depths of despair to the heights of spiritual enlightenment, a journey that, I hope, can touch something inside you, just as it touched something inside me. The day my life changed forever started like any other. It was a hot afternoon in July 2020, and I was at a lakeside party with some friends, but my heart wasn't in the celebration. Weeks earlier, my engagement had ended abruptly, leaving me in a state of confusion and pain. While my friends laughed and drank, I felt like a stranger, out of place in my own body. I decided to move away from the group, looking for a moment of solitude to try to calm my agitated mind. I found a quiet spot by the water, away from the noise of the party. I sat on the bank, my feet dipped in the cool water. The sun reflected off the surface of the lake, creating a light show that seemed to dance before my eyes. I closed my eyes and began to breathe deeply, trying to practice the meditation I had recently begun to explore. As I focused on my breathing, I felt a subtle shift. The world around me seemed to gradually disappear, and a feeling of deep calm began to wash over me. It was as if I were floating, free from the worries and pain that tormented me. In this state of tranquility, I had a sudden impulse. There was a water slide nearby, which led to a shallow part of the lake. Without thinking much, I decided to use it. Maybe it was the desire to feel something, anything, beyond the emptiness that consumed me. I climbed the steps of the slide, my heart beating a little faster with anticipation. When I reached the top, I looked down. The water sparkled, inviting. I took a deep breath and launched myself. The moment I entered the water, I knew something was terribly wrong. A sharp, intense pain shot through my body like lightning. It was as if every nerve was on fire. I tried to move my arms, my legs, but nothing responded. Panic gripped me when I realized I couldn't move. The water enveloped me, cold and unforgiving. I struggled to keep my head above the surface, but my efforts were futile. I felt my lungs burn as I struggled to breathe. The world around me began to darken, my friends' voices becoming distant and muffled. At that moment, I was absolutely sure I was dying. A primal fear gripped me, followed by a wave of overwhelming sadness. There was so much I still wanted to do, so much I wanted to say. And now, it seemed like he would never have that chance. As darkness enveloped me, my last thoughts were of regret and a desperate wish for more time. More time to love, to live, to understand. And then, everything went dark. What happened next defies any rational explanation. One moment I was drowning, fighting against the darkness that enveloped me, and the next moment I found myself floating in a vast, luminous space. The pain was completely gone, replaced by a feeling of peace and lightness that I had never experienced before. In this ethereal space, there was no clear sense of direction or time. It was like I was everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The light around me did not come from a specific source, but seemed to emanate from everything, including myself. It was then that I saw them for the first time, the luminaries. 6 luminous figures appeared before me, each radiating an energy of wisdom and compassion that left me in a state of awe. They did not have defined shapes as we understand them in the physical world. They were more like concentrations of light and energy, each with its own unique vibrational signature. Communication with the luminaries did not happen through spoken words. It was a form of direct transmission of thoughts and emotions, clearer and deeper than any conversation I had ever had. I felt enveloped by unconditional love and understanding that transcended anything I had ever experienced. The luminaries began to share with me knowledge and insights that seemed to come from the very roots of the universe. They spoke about the interconnectedness of all things, about how our every action and thought reverberates through the fabric of reality. They showed me visions of future possibilities, timelines intertwining and separating in complex patterns. And then, they told me about the date, August 17th, 2024. They didn't tell me exactly what would happen on that day, but they made it clear that it would be an event of immense importance for all humanity. A convergence of energies, a turning point in the collective destiny of our species. The luminaries emphasized that the most important thing was not the event itself, but how we prepared for it. They spoke about the need to raise our collective consciousness, to align ourselves with higher frequencies of love and compassion. They showed me how the internal work that each individual does has repercussions on the whole, creating waves of transformation that spread throughout the world. As I absorbed these revelations, I felt an immense responsibility weighing on me. The luminaries made me understand that I had a role to play, that my near-death experience was not an accident, but a calling to help prepare others for the great change that was coming. Before I could ask questions, before I could ask for more details, I felt myself being pulled back. The light began to dissipate, and the luminaries began to move away. I tried to catch up, desperate to stay longer, to learn more. But the force pulling me was irresistible. The last thing I heard, or rather felt, was a clear message. Remember, Nathaniel, August 17th, 2024. Prepare yourself. Prepare others. Time is short, but the potential is infinite. And then, in the blink of an eye, I was thrown back into physical reality, back into pain, back into the fight for life. But now, I carried with me knowledge that would change everything. Returning to my body was like being struck by lightning. The pain returned with overwhelming intensity, and suddenly I was coughing up water, struggling to breathe. Anxious voices surrounded me. Hands held me. I opened my eyes and saw worried faces floating above me, blurry and unrecognizable. I tried to speak, tried to tell them about the luminaries, about the date, but my throat was on fire, and no sound came out. The confusion and panic in my friend's eyes told me something was very wrong. Only then did I realize that I couldn't feel my body below my neck. The next few hours passed in a blur of sirens, bright lights, and urgent voices. I was rushed to the hospital, subjected to a series of tests, and finally taken into surgery. The diagnosis was scary. I had broken my neck after hitting the bottom of the lake. I woke up from surgery in a haze of painkillers, hooked up to a series of machines that beeped and buzzed. The doctor, Dr. Samuel Wright, gently explained that the surgery had been a success, but that my recovery would be long and uncertain. There was the possibility of permanent paralysis. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. The physical pain was constant, an unrelenting presence that reminded me every moment of the fragility of my body. But it was the emotional pain that tormented me most. I felt trapped, not only in my damaged body, but also by the weight of the knowledge I had received. As I struggled to move my toes, to feel my feet, my mind was filled with visions of what I had experienced, the luminaries, the space of light, the feeling of connection to something so much bigger than myself. It all felt so real, so vivid. And the date, August 17th, 2024, pulsed in my consciousness like a distant scent. My friends and family visited me regularly, bringing flowers, words of encouragement, and looks of pity that made me want to scream in frustration. They couldn't understand. How could I explain that while my body was broken, my spirit had been expanded beyond measure? Dr. Wright, a man of science to the core, attributed my hallucinations to the lack of oxygen to the brain during the drowning. He assured me that such experiences were common in near-death cases, and that, in time, I would see them for what they really were, tricks of the mind in a time of extreme stress. But I knew the truth. What he had experienced was more real than anything he had ever experienced. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, this certainty only grew. My body might be damaged, but my spirit was more alive than ever. Slowly, with a lot of physical therapy and determination, I began to regain movement. Every little bit of progress was a victory, not just over my physical condition, but over the limitations that the world was trying to impose on my new reality. And all this time, as I struggled to regain control of my body, my mind was focused on one thing. How could I accomplish the mission I was given? How could I prepare people for what was coming on August 17th, 2024? As my physical recovery progressed, I realized I was undergoing a much deeper transformation. It was as if the veil that separated the material world from the spiritual had been torn, allowing me to glimpse a reality much vaster and more complex than I had ever imagined. I began to notice subtle changes in my perception. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds clearer. Sometimes I caught glimpses of energies around people, like soft auras that pulsed and changed color according to their emotional states. At first, I thought it was side effects of the medication, but over time, I realized it was something deeper. Meditation, which was once just an occasional exercise for me, has become a daily necessity. Each time I closed my eyes and turned inward, I felt a growing connection to that luminous vastness I experienced during my near-death experience. It was as if a channel had been opened, allowing me to access deeper levels of consciousness. During these meditation sessions, I began to receive insights and visions. Sometimes they were flashes of the future, brief glimpses of events yet to come. Other times, they were messages from the luminaries, gentle reminders of the importance of the approaching date and the need for preparation. My nurse, a kind woman named Sarah, was the first to notice the change in me. "There's something different about your eyes, Nathaniel," she told me one day. "Oh, it's like you're seeing beyond what's in front of you." His observation took me by surprise, but it also gave me courage. If others could see the change, perhaps they would be more open to hearing what I had to say. As my physical strength returned, I felt a growing urge to share what I had learned. But how could I explain something so vast, so beyond everyday experience? How could I prepare people for a change that I myself barely understood? It was during one of these reflections that I had an idea. If I couldn't explain it in words, maybe I could show it through images. Having never had any artistic skills before, I picked up a pencil and started drawing. To my surprise, the images flowed out of me as if they were being channeled from some external source. I drew the luminaries, the space of light, the visions of the future that were shown to me. Each drawing was a window into what I had experienced, an attempt to capture the uncapturable. And as I drew, I felt more connected than ever with the mission I was given. People started to notice my drawings. "Nathaniel," he told me in one of our sessions, "it's common for patients to develop new interests after traumatic experiences, but it's important not to get lost in fantasies. We need to focus on your physical recovery." But I knew this was more than a fantasy. It was a calling, a purpose that transcended my previous existence. And as the days went by, I felt more and more compelled to act, to start preparing people for what was to come. The date, August 17th, 2024, was no longer just a number to me. It was a beacon on the horizon, guiding every thought, every action. And I knew that my spiritual awakening journey was just the beginning. As the months passed and my recovery progressed, I felt a new impulse rising within me. It was as if an inner voice, soft but insistent, was calling me to something I had never considered before: sewing. I had never touched a needle in my life, much less operated a sewing machine. As a software engineer, my world was made of codes and algorithms, not fabrics and threads, but the impulse was undeniable, almost visceral in its intensity. One day during a physical therapy session, I mentioned this strange desire to my therapist, Lisa. To my surprise, instead of laughing or dismissing the idea, she smiled enthusiastically. "Occupational therapy through sewing can be very beneficial, Nathaniel," she explained. "It helps with fine motor skills and can be very relaxing. Why don't we try it?" So, with Lisa's support, I began my journey into the world of sewing. At first, it was frustrating. My hands, still regaining full sensation, struggled to hold the needle properly. The stitches came out crooked, irregular. But there was something about the repetition of the movement, the gentle rhythm of the needle penetrating the fabric, that calmed me deeply. As he practiced, something extraordinary began to happen. As I sewed, I entered an almost meditative state. In these moments, the visions I had during my near-death experience came back with stunning clarity. It was as if every point I made was connecting me more deeply to that greater reality that the luminaries had shown me. I started creating tapestries, something I had never done before. The images that appeared in my creations were surprising even to me. Complex geometric patterns intertwined with ethereal symbols. Vibrant colors danced across the fabric, creating effects that seemed almost alive, pulsing with an energy of their own. The first piece I created was a simple square of fabric, but the patterns embroidered onto it were anything but simple. Golden lines traced intricate shapes that reminded me of the luminaries and the arc of light under which I found them. In the center, subtly stitched in deep blue, were the numbers Wamba Saintin 082024, the date that was on my mind. When I showed my creation to Sarah, the nurse who had noticed the change in my eyes, she was speechless. "Nathaniel," she said finally, "this is extraordinary." Ever the skeptic, viewed my new obsession with a mixture of fascination and concern. "It's amazing how the brain can adapt after trauma," he commented one day, examining one of my tapestries. "But remember, Nathaniel, it's important to keep your feet on the ground." But I knew this was more than just an adaptation. It was a calling, a mission. Every point I gave was an affirmation of my commitment to preparing for what was to come. And as my creations accumulated, I felt like I was gradually decoding a cosmic message, revealing layers of meaning that went far beyond fabric and thread. Sewing became my meditation, my therapy, and my art form. And through it, I was slowly weaving a bridge between the world I knew and the vast universe of possibilities the luminaries had shown me. As my recovery progressed and my tapestries accumulated, I felt a growing need to more deeply understand the meaning behind the date the luminaries had revealed to me. August 17, 2024. These numbers danced in my mind, a constant riddle that I knew I needed to decipher. It was at that moment that I remembered Grace Willow, an old college friend who had always had a deep interest in the esoteric and spiritual. We hadn't spoken in years, but something told me she could be the key to unlocking part of this mystery. I found Grace working as a yoga teacher and numerology practitioner in a small crystal shop in downtown Havenbrook. As I entered the store, the soft tinkling of wind chimes announced my presence. And there she was. Just as I remembered, bright eyes, welcoming smile, and an aura of serenity that seemed to fill the room. "Nathaniel," she said, her face lighting up with recognition. "Something told me you would come." I was not surprised by his words. Grace has always had a keen intuition. I spent the next few hours sharing my story with Grace. The accident, the near-death experience, the luminaries, and the mysterious date. She listened intently, her eyes widening with wonder as I described my journey. "Nathaniel," she said finally, "what you have experienced is extraordinary, and that date, there is something powerful about it." Grace picked up a piece of paper and began doing calculations, muttering to herself as she worked. "See," she explained, showing me her notes. "In numerology, 17 is a very significant number. It is the fusion of 1, which represents new beginnings and leadership, with 7, which symbolizes spirituality and mystical knowledge. Together, they form a portal to higher consciousness." We continue to explore the numbers. The 8 of August, the 8th month, represents infinity, abundance, and cosmic balance. And 2024, when reduced, 2 plus 2 plus 4, gives 8 again, reinforcing this symbolism. "It's as if this date is a cosmic alignment," Grace concluded, her eyes shining with excitement. "A moment of convergence between the physical and the spiritual, an opportunity for a profound shift in collective consciousness." His words resonated deeply with me, echoing what I intuitively felt but couldn't articulate. It was as if pieces of a cosmic puzzle were beginning to fall into place. In the days and weeks that followed, Grace and I met regularly, delving deeper into numerology, astrology, and ancient prophecies. Each new discovery seemed to confirm the importance of the date and the urgency of preparation. I shared my tapestries with Grace, and she was fascinated by the symbols and patterns that I had unconsciously incorporated into my work. "These symbols," she said, tracing a complex shape on one of my pieces, "appear in spiritual traditions around the world. It's as if you're channeling universal knowledge." Our search for understanding has become a shared journey. Grace taught me more advanced meditation techniques, helping me deepen my connection to the higher realms I had glimpsed. In return, I shared with her the messages and visions I received during my meditative sewing sessions. Together, we began to form a clearer picture of what could be to come. These were not specific details of future events, but a deeper understanding of the transformation humanity could be about to face. It was both exciting and frightening, the prospect of such a profound shift in collective consciousness. As we delved deeper into our search, one thing became increasingly clear. Preparing for August 17th, 2024 wasn't just about intellectually understanding what could happen. It was about internal preparation, an alignment of the being with higher frequencies of consciousness. And so, with Grace as my ally and spiritual guide, I found myself embarking on the next phase of my journey, not just seeking to understand, but actively preparing myself for what was to come and helping others do the same. With Grace's support and guidance, I began to feel a growing urgency to share what I had learned. It was no longer enough to just prepare. I knew I had a responsibility to help others prepare too for whatever August 17, 2024 might bring. We started modestly, organizing small meditation and reflection groups in Havenbrook. At first, it was just Grace and I, plus a few curious friends and a few hospital patients who had been intrigued by my tapestries during my recovery. Our first meetings took place in Grace's little crystal shop. The space was cramped but welcoming, filled with the scent of incense and the soft glow of candles. I shared my story, described my encounter with the luminaries, and talked about the importance of the upcoming date. Grace complemented this with her knowledge of numerology and spiritual practices. To my surprise and delight, people didn't just listen, they resonated with the message. Many shared that they had also felt a growing unease, a sense that something significant was about to happen. Some even reported having dreams or visions related to the same date. One woman, Elaine, an elementary school teacher, shared with tears in her eyes, "For months I've been dreaming about a bright light enveloping the world. And I always wake up with these numbers in my mind, 17082-2024. I thought I was going crazy, but now I know I'm not alone." As the weeks passed, our little group grew. The meetings moved to a larger space, the community hall of the local church, kindly provided by an open-minded pastor who, although skeptical, recognized the importance of what we were doing. At each meeting, I brought a new tapestry, each one more complex and detailed than the last. People gathered around them, many reporting sensations of heat, vibrations, or even visions as they watched them. It was as if the tapestries were portals, allowing others to glimpse fragments of what I had experienced. Grace led group meditations, teaching techniques to elevate consciousness and tune into higher frequencies. I shared the insights I received during my meditative sewing sessions, translating the luminaries' ethereal messages into practical guidance for spiritual preparation. As our community grew, we started to attract attention, not all of it positive. Dr. Wright, my former doctor, expressed concern about what he saw as a mass obsession. He reached out to me the day after one of our meetings. "Nathaniel," he said, his voice a mix of concern and frustration, "I understand that your experience was profound, but you need to consider the impact you're having on people. What if nothing happens then? Have you thought about the consequences?" His words hit me hard. Had I considered this possibility? What would happen if August 17th, 2024 came and went without any significant events? I spent sleepless nights reflecting on this, meditating, seeking guidance. It was during one of these nights of introspection that I had a powerful vision. The luminaries appeared to me, not in physical form, but as presences of light and wisdom. His words resonated in my mind. "The event is not the destination, Nathaniel. It is the path. The transformation you seek is not something that happens in a single day, but an ongoing process of raising consciousness." August 17th, 2024 is a focal point, a catalyst. The true miracle is in the journey of preparation, in opening hearts and minds to greater possibilities. This revelation brought a new perspective to our work. At the next meeting, I shared this vision with the group. "We're not preparing for a single day," I explained. "We are preparing for a new way of being, a new way of living in harmony with the universe and with each other." This shift in perspective has further energized our community. People began to report significant changes in their lives, relationships improving, intuitions sharpening, a deeper sense of purpose and connection. Sarah, the nurse who had taken care of me at the hospital, became an active participant in our meetings. One day, she shared, "Since I started meditating and focusing on this date, I've noticed that I'm more patient with my patients. It's like I can feel their needs before they even express them. I'm becoming a better healer." Stories like Sarah's multiplied. A local businessman reported that he had begun making more ethical decisions in his business. What started as my personal journey had transformed into a collective awakening movement. And as August 17th, 2024 approached, I realized that no matter what happened that day, we were already experiencing the transformation that the luminaries had predicted. On the other hand, the doubts planted by Drs. Wright and other skeptics continued to echo in my mind. What if I was wrong? What if this was all just an elaborate construction of my traumatized mind? The consequences of leading so many people down a path that might lead nowhere weighed heavily on me. These doubts began to manifest themselves in my dreams. Night after night, I found myself in harrowing scenarios. In a recurring dream, I was standing before a crowd on August 17, 2024. Everyone looked at me expectantly, awaiting the great event I had promised. But nothing happened. The sky remained the same. The world continued to rotate as it always had. The disappointment in people's eyes was palpable, and I felt like a charlatan, a false prophet. I woke up from these dreams in a cold sweat, with my heart racing. Anxiety began to affect my work with the tapestries. My hands shook as I held the needle, and the patterns that once flowed naturally now felt forced and confusing. Grace noticed my agitation. After one of our meetings, she took me aside. "Nathaniel," she said softly, "what's going on? You seem distant." I vented to her, sharing my fears and doubts. Grace listened to me patiently, her eyes full of compassion. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Nathaniel," she said, "the conflict you are feeling is natural. It is part of the process. Remember, faith is not the absence of doubt, but the courage to move forward despite it." His words touched something deep inside me. She continued, "Think about your tapestries. Each stitch is an act of faith. You don't see the complete pattern as you're working, but you trust that it will reveal itself. Our spiritual journey is similar." I reflected on his words in the days that followed. I realized that my fear of failure was keeping me from living fully in the present, from appreciating the beauty of the journey we were on. I decided to face my doubts head-on. At our next meeting, I openly shared with the group about my internal conflict. To my surprise, many expressed that they had struggled with similar doubts. "We're not here because we're absolutely sure what's going to happen," said one member of the group. "We are here because we choose to believe in the possibility of something bigger, something better." Another added, "Even if nothing happens on that specific date, look at all the positive changes we've already experienced. Isn't that valuable in and of itself?" Your words and support touched me deeply. I realized that the real miracle was not some cosmic event that might or might not happen, but the transformation that was already occurring in our lives and in our community. That evening I sat down to work on a new tapestry. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tension leave my body. My mind calmed, and the images began to flow freely. The pattern that emerged was unlike anything I had created before. It was a visual representation of the conflict itself, with dark and light lines intertwining to form something incredibly beautiful. As I worked, I felt a familiar presence, the luminaries. I didn't see them this time. I had fears, but I also had a deep conviction that we were on the right path. And regardless of what August 17, 2024 might bring, I knew that the journey itself was the true transformation. And so, finally, we arrive at this moment. It's the night of August 16, 2024, and I'm sitting by the same lake where it all began 4 years ago. The irony is not lost on me. The place that almost took my physical life now serves as the stage for what may be a collective spiritual rebirth. Around me, gathered in a large circle, are all those who have been part of this extraordinary journey. Grace is on my right, her eyes closed in silent meditation. Sarah, the nurse who has become a dear friend, is on my left, holding one of my tapestries in her lap. Dr. Wright is here too, still skeptical but open enough to join us on this crucial night. The sky above is incredibly clear, the stars shining with an intensity that seems otherworldly. It's as if the universe itself is watching, waiting. The surface of the lake is calm, reflecting the starry sky like a perfect mirror. There is a stillness in the air, a palpable sense of anticipation. Each person in the circle holds a small candle, the flame flickering gently in the night breeze. Candlelight dances on the faces around me, illuminating expressions that range from anxious expectation to profound serenity. As I watch the group, I am overcome by a wave of emotion. I see the businessman who learned to put ethics above profit, the teenager who overcame her anxiety, the couple who rebuilt their relationship through shared meditation. Each face tells a story of personal transformation, a living testimony to the power of expanded consciousness. In the center of our circle, spread out on the grass, is my latest and most elaborate tapestry. It is a massive piece, an intricate mosaic of symbols and patterns that seem to shift and move in the candlelight. In the center of the tapestry, embroidered in golden threads, is the number that brought us here, 17082024. As midnight approaches, I feel a subtle shift in the air, forming an unbroken human chain around the lake. The silence is deep, full of expectation. And then it happens. It is not a cataclysmic event. There are no blinding lights in the sky or tremors in the earth. Instead, it's a subtle change, barely noticeable to anyone who isn't tuned in. I feel a wave of energy pass through me, connecting me not just to the people around me, but to all life on Earth. For a fleeting moment, I have a clear view of every human being on the planet, every animal, every plant. I see the currents of energy that bind us together, the invisible fabric of consciousness that permeates everything. I look around and see in the eyes of others that they are experiencing something similar. There are tears, smiles, expressions of amazement and reverence. Dr. Wright, who was standing next to me, suddenly squeezes my hand tightly. "Nathaniel," he whispers, his voice shaky. I can feel it. It's real." As the first rays of the sun of August 17th, 2024 begin to tint the horizon, I feel a deep sense of peace and purpose. It's not the end of our journey, I realize now. It's just the beginning. The world around us may look the same to physical eyes, but we know that something fundamental has changed. A door has been opened. A new level of consciousness has been reached. As the sun fully rises, illuminating our circle with its golden light, I feel the luminaries' presence stronger than ever. I don't see them, but I hear their message clearly in my heart. The work has just begun. Go forth and share this light with the world. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and purpose, I prepare for the next chapter of our collective journey. The world is changing, and we are the agents of this change. August 17th, 2024 is not the end. It's a new beginning. But I felt their comforting energy. A clear message resonated in my mind. Doubt is the fertile soil where true faith grows. Embrace it, learn from it, but don't let it paralyze you. As I finished the tapestry, I felt a new resolve forming within me. Yes, I had doubts. Yes,